The Legends of Renzu, Part 1. One of the oldest legends talk about the Hope Goo. In the legend, when the world was just formed, it was a land of savage wilderness. Among the wild beasts that walked the earth, the first man appeared. He was known as Renzu, eating raw meat and drinking blood, living a difficult life. In particular was a group of wild beasts called Predicament. These wild beasts loved the taste of Renzu and longed to eat him. Renzu did not have a body as strong as mountain rock, nor did he have the sharp teeth and claws of a wild beast. How could he fight with the Predicaments? His source of food was unstable, and he had to hide all day. He was at the bottom of nature's food chain, and could barely survive. At this moment there were 3 Goo that came up to him and said, "As long as you use your life to provide us, we will help you through this difficulty." Renzu had nowhere to go, so he could only agree to these 3 Goo. He first gave his youth away to the biggest Goo among the 3. That Goo then granted him strength. With strength, Renzu's life began to change. He started to have a stable source of food and was able to protect himself. He fought bravely and ruthlessly, defeating many predicaments. But soon he suffered and finally realized that strength was not everything. It needed to heal and be cultivated, not spent freely at his will. Not to mention, when facing the entire group of predicaments, his strength alone was too small. Renzu reflected over this lesson bitterly and decided to give his prime middle years to the most beautiful Goo among the 3. And thus, the second Goo gave him wisdom. With wisdom, Renzu was able to learn how to think and reflect. He began to accumulate experience and found out that many times when he used wisdom, it was more effective than using strength. By relying on wisdom and strength was he able to conquer all the goals that he formerly could not, and killed many predicaments. He ate the meat of predicaments and drank the blood of predicaments, surviving with tenacity. But good things do not last, and Renzu was old, and would only grow older and older. This is because he gave away his youth and middle years to keep the strength Goo and wisdom Goo. When a man is old, his muscles deteriorate and his brain slows down. "Human, what else can you give us? You don't have anything else left to provide to us," the strength Goo and wisdom Goo said as they realized this. They left him. Without wisdom and strength, Renzu was once surrounded by predicaments. He was old and could not run. His teeth had fallen out and could not even chew wild fruits and plants. As he fell weakly onto the ground, surrounded by predicaments, his heart was filled with desperation. It was at this time the 3rd Goo said to him, "Human, take me up. I will help you escape predicament." Renzu tearfully replied, "Goo, I don't have anything else left. See, the strength Goo and wisdom Goo have abandoned me. I only have my old age left. While it is not as worth my youth and middle age, but if I give you my old age, my life would immediately end. Even though I am surrounded by predicaments right now, but I will not die immediately. I wish to live a little longer, even if just a second more, so you should leave. I have nothing else to provide to you." But the Goo said, "Among the 3, I have the smallest needs. Human, if you just give me your heart, it will be enough." "Then I will give you my heart," Renzu said. "But Goo, what can you give me in return? In this situation, even if the strength Goo and wisdom Goo returned to my side, it would change nothing." When compared to the strength Goo, this Goo looked frail and was just a tiny ball of light. When compared to the wisdom Goo, this one was only able to give out a dim white light, not beautiful in any way. But when Renzu gave it his heart, this Goo suddenly gave out endless light. In this light, the predicaments screamed in horror, "This is the Hope Goo. Withdraw. We predicaments are most afraid of hope." The predicaments retreated suddenly. Renzu was speechless, and from that day onwards, whenever he faced predicament, he would give his heart to hope. The Legends of Renzu, Part 2. The story mentioned that Renzu was able to escape his predicament because of hope. But eventually he grew old, and without strength gu and wisdom gu, he could no longer continue to hunt. Even his teeth fell off, making him unable to chew many wild fruits and vegetables. Renzu felt death slowly approaching. At this time, the Hope Gu said to him, "Human, you must not die. If you die, your heart will be lost, and I will lose my only place of residence." Renzu was helpless. Who wishes to die? But if the heavens and earth want me dead, I have no choice. The Hope Gu said, "There's always hope in everything. As long as you can catch a longevity gu, you will be able to increase your lifespan." Renzu had heard of the existence of the longevity gu long ago, but he waved his hand helplessly. When the longevity gu stays still, nobody can detect it, and when it flies, it is faster than light. How can I possibly catch it? It's too hard. The Hope Gu then told Renzu a secret. "Human, don't give up hope no matter what. Let me tell you, on the northwest corner of this continent, there is a huge mountain. On the mountain there is a cave, and in that cave there is a pair of round and square gu worms. As long as you can subdue them, there is no gu in this world that you cannot catch, including the longevity gu." Renzu had no choice. This was his last remaining hope. He braved all difficulties and finally found the mountain. He then risked his life and ventured through countless dangers to ascend the mountain. On the mountain top, near the cave entrance, he used his last remaining strength to slowly make his way in. The inside of the cave was completely dark, and one would not be able to even see their own fingers. Renzu walked in the darkness. Sometimes he would bump into things not knowing what they were. This caused himself to get injured and wounded all over. At times he felt that this dark cave was huge beyond words, as if this was a world of its own. He felt as if he was the only person in the area. He spent a lot of time, but he could not walk out of the darkness, not to mention subduing the two gu worms. Just when he was at a loss about what to do, two voices spoke to him from the darkness. One voice said, "Human, you're here to catch us? Go back, for even if you had the strength gu, it would be impossible." The other said, "Human, go back. We will not take your life. Even if you had the wisdom gu to help you, you may not be able to find us." Renzu laid exhausted on the ground, panting. The strength gu and wisdom. Gu had left me long ago, and I do not have much lifespan left, so I'm at my wit's end. But as long as there's hope in my heart, I will not give up. Hearing Renzu's words, the two voices went silent. After a while, one of the gus said, "I understand, human. You have already given your heart to the Hope Gu. You will not give up no matter what." The other continued, "In that case, we shall give you a chance. As long as you can say our name, we will allow you to use us." Renzu was stunned. To find their names among all the words in the world, it was akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, he did not even know how many words were in their names. Renzu quickly asked the Hope Gu, but it did not know either. Renzu had no alternatives and had no choice but to randomly guess their names. He said many names and wasted a lot of time, but the darkness did not respond to him, so evidently he was wrong. Eventually, Renzu's breath got weaker as he turned from an old man into a dying man. It was like the scene of the evening's setting sun. The sun that would slowly descending had already been lowered halfway across the horizon, becoming a sunset. The food he had brought was gradually reduced, his brain becoming slower, and he barely had any energy to speak anymore. The voice in the darkness urged, "Human, you are almost dead, so we will let you go. Using your remaining time, you can climb out of the cave and take a final look at the world. But you have offended us, and as punishment, the Hope Gu shall stay here as our companion." Renzu clenched his heart and rejected, "Even if I die, I will not give up hope." The Hope Gu was very touched and answered Renzu's call enthusiastically, emitting a bright light. At Renzu's chest area, a light began to shine, but this light was too weak. It could not illuminate the darkness. In fact, it could not even cover Renzu's entire body, but only engulfed his chest area. Yet Renzu could feel a renewed surge of energy gushing into his body from the hope goo. He continued to speak, shouting out names, but he was already muddled. A lot of names had already been said, but he could not remember that, and repeated them, wasting a lot of effort in the process. As time continued to flow, Renzu's lifespan was almost over. Finally, when he was on his final day, he said out the word regulation. A sigh came from the darkness as a voice spoke. "Human, I admire your perseverance. You have said my name, so from today onwards, I will obey your commands. But only with my brother can I aid you in capturing all the goo in the world. Otherwise, with my ability alone, it is impossible. Thus, you should give up. You're almost dead. You might as well use this chance to take a final look at the world." Renzu was determined and shook his head. He made use of all his time to continue saying out names as he tried to guess the other goo worm's name. Seconds and minutes went by, and soon he only had 1 hour left. But at this time he unknowingly said the word rule. Immediately the darkness dissipated. The two goos appeared before him. As the hope goo had said, one was cubic, called regulations. The other was spherical, called rules. Together they made up rules and regulations. The two goo said together, "No matter who it is, as long as they know our names, we will listen to them. Human, since you know our names already, we will be at your service. But you must remember, it is important to not let others know of our names. The more people that know our names, the more people we have to obey them. Now that you are the first to subdue us, tell us your request." Renzu was overjoyed. "Then I order you both, go and catch me a longevity goo." The rules, goo, and regulations. Goo worked together and captured an 80-year longevity goo. Renzu was already 100 years old, but after consuming this goo, the wrinkles on his face vanished and his frail limbs became muscular again. A vibrant aura of youth oozed from him. With a belly flop, he jumped up onto his feet. He ecstatically looked at his body, knowing that he had regained the body of a 20-year-old. The Legends of Renzu, Part 3. Ever since Renzu was able to get their names and subdued the rules goo and regulation goo, his first order was for them to capture a longevity goo. Rules goo and regulation goo, one round and other square, worked together and could capture all the goo in the world. A longevity goo was nothing difficult. Renzu used the longevity goo and got back his youth, becoming 20 years old again. But now the rules goo said, "Human, although you subdued us, every time you command us, it will add a rule and regulation." Regulation goo continued, "We can catch the longevity goo for you. This is the first order. Our new rule and regulation is, we will not repeatedly catch the same goo for you. That means, if Renzu wanted to catch a longevity goo again, the two rules goo and regulation goo would not help." Renzu nodded, having no choice but to accept. He gave his second command. "Then, other than the longevity goo, please capture all the other 10,000 goo in the world for me." Rules, goo, and regulation. Goo got this command and rules goo turned into a giant circle encompassing the universe. Regulation goo turned into a giant square covering the large world. One square and one round formed a giant net together, enveloping the entire world. When they shrunk again and returned to Renzu, all the goo in the world other than longevity goo were captured. Renzu was overjoyed. With this, all the goo belonged to him. From now on, he was the ruler of the world. But once he opened the net, with a swoosh, a large number of worms flew outside, and the goo that rules goo and regulation goo worked hard to catch. All escaped fervently. When Renzu closed the net, only 5 goo were left. "Why is this?" Renzu was astonished. Rules Gu and Regulation Gu answered him, "Human, the world has over 10,000 Gu with all sorts of abilities. You have no strength or knowledge. How can you subdue them? We can only capture Gu for you. To subdue them, you have to rely on yourself to get them to work for you." Next, they added, "This is your second order, so we'll add a second rule and regulation. From now on, we can only catch one Gu for you at a time." Renzu could only nod and carefully opened the net, only showing a small gap. The remaining 5 Gu contained the Strength Gu and Wisdom Gu. Seeing this, Renzu was overjoyed. He said to Strength Gu, "Strength Gu, you left me back then. Do you have any regrets? If you succumb to me now, I will return you your freedom." Strength Gu said, "Human, you are wrong. I didn't leave not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to stay. You want to subdue me, but that's impossible. I only succumb to those stronger than me, but you are out of the question. However, we can deal again. Give me your youth, and I will temporarily obey you." Renzu was reluctant upon hearing this. He had just gotten back his youth. Was he about to lose it again? But he desired strength. He knew that with strength, he would get stronger and life would get easier. Moreover, with strength, he could subdue more Gu. Thus, Renzu accepted and formed a second deal with it. Renzu became middle-aged at once, and the Strength Gu flew out of the web and landed on Renzu's shoulder. Renzu had strength and was full of confidence. He said to Wisdom Gu, "Wisdom Gu, you left me back then. Do you have any regrets? If you succumb to me now, I will return you your freedom." Wisdom Gu said, "Human, you are wrong. I did not leave not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to stay. You want to subdue me, but that's impossible. I only succumb to those smarter than me, yet you are not smarter than me. But we can deal again. Give me your middle age, and I will temporarily obey you." Renzu, upon hearing this, refused to do the same deal again. He treasured his life more, and he also knew that once he sold his middle age, he would be left with old age. Before long, the Strength Gu and Wisdom Gu would leave him again, just like last time. Renzu refused to deal, but did not want to let go of the Wisdom Gu. Wisdom Gu was anxious, reluctantly giving in. "All right, human, you win. I lost to you this time. As long as you tell me what method you used to capture me, I will admit defeat and not take anything from you, being at your disposal." Upon hearing this, Renzu was overjoyed, and before the Rules Gu and Regulation Gu could stop him, he said, "I used the Rules Gu and Regulation Gu to capture you." Wisdom Gu laughed upon hearing. "I remembered it. So these Gu are called Rules Gu and Regulation Gu. Ha! Now that I know your names, you can no longer capture me." Saying so, it turned into a flash of light and flew away, vanishing into thin air. Rules Gu and Regulation Gu begin to complain. "Human, we told you long ago that our name should be known by you alone and not others. Otherwise, we would be used by others. Look what happened. Now that Wisdom Gu knows our names, it spells trouble." Only then did Renzu The Legends of Renzu, Part 4. Words have it that Renzu used the Rules Gu and Regulation Gu and obtained Strength Gu, but losing Wisdom Gu, leaving behind 3 Gu worms. One was Suspicion Gu, one was Trust Gu, and another was Attitude Gu. Renzu grabbed the Attitude Gu. Attitude Gu followed the betting rules, submitting to Renzu, telling him, "Human, you caught me. I can only curse my bad luck. From now on, I will be at your command. Wear me, and you will be able to use my ability." Attitude. Gu's appearance was like a mask. Renzu put it on his face, but in the end he could not wear it. Even if he used a rope to tie it, it would still fall off. "What's going on?" Renzu was troubled. Attitude Gu laughed. "I know, human, you have no heart. Attitude is the mask of the heart, so without a heart, how can you wear me?" Renzu realized at once he had already given his heart to hope. He was heartless. Someone who is heartless cannot wear the attitude mask. In other words, to someone with a heart, an intention, their attitude is a mask. The Legends of Renzu, Part 5. If Renzu wanted to use the attitude Gu, he needed to have a heart. Renzu was troubled, thus he asked attitude Gu. He said, "Oh Gu, sometimes attitude says it's all. Now that I have encountered a problem, you know it. Thus I'm here to seek advice." Attitude Gu said, "This is not hard. Renzu, you lack a heart, thus you just have to find a new one." Renzu was confused, asking again, "Then how can I find a new heart?" Attitude Gu sighed, "Heart is nowhere and everywhere. Finding a heart, it is both easy and difficult. With your situation, you can obtain a heart now." Renzu was overjoyed. "Quick, tell me, how?" Attitude Gu warned him, "This heart is called loneliness. Human, are you sure you want it? Once you obtain it, you will face endless pain, loneliness, and even fear." Renzu did not listen to his warning. He continued asking. Attitude Gu could not defy Renzu's orders. Thus he said, "You only have to stare at the sky on a starry night and say nothing. Once you reach daylight, you will obtain the heart of loneliness." That night it was a star-filled sky. According to Attitude Gu's instructions, Renzu sat alone at the mountain peak, staring at the night sky. Before this, his life was very difficult, constantly struggling for survival. He had no time to admire this beautiful yet mysterious sky. But now, as he stared at the starry sky, his thoughts began floating. Constantly thinking about himself, such a meager and weak being like himself, living a life of constant fear and insecurity. Sigh, although I have hope Gu, strength Gu, rules Gu, and regulation Gu, and attitude Gu to survive in this land, it is still difficult as ever. Even if I die tomorrow, it is not shocking. If I die, will the world remember me? Will anyone rejoice over my existence and grieve over my death?" Thinking of this, Renzu shook his head. In this world, he was the only human. How can there be others? Even with Gu accompanying him, he still felt a strong sense of loneliness, heart of loneliness. At this moment, when Renzu felt lonely, his body suddenly had a brand new heart. The sun rose from the horizon and shone on his face. But Renzu felt no happiness, and instead felt an endless pain, despair, confusion, and even fear. He could not endure this loneliness and fear, for all he felt was the advent of darkness and apocalypse. Thus he painfully cried, stretching out his fingers and digging out his eyes. His left eye fell onto the ground and transformed into a young man. He had golden hair and a strong body. Once he appeared, he kneeled at Renzu's feet, saying, "O Renzu, my father, I am your eldest son, verdant great son." At the same time, his right eye turned into a young girl, and she held Renzu's hand, saying, "O Renzu, my father, I am your second daughter, desolate ancient moon." Renzu laughed loudly, tears flowing out of his empty sockets. He said, "Good," 3 times and continued, "I have children now. I can finally endure the pain of the heart of loneliness. From now on, there will be people celebrating my existence and grieving for my death. Even if I die now, you will remember me." Only that. Finally, he sighed. "I lost both my eyes and can no longer see the light. From now on, you two shall observe this world for me." In the legend, before Renzu died, he gave birth to 10 children. The eldest son, verdant great son. Second daughter, desolate ancient moon. Among the 10, there was one named Northern Dark Ice Soul. Renzu's legends, whether real or false, alluded to many secrets in Gu Master's cultivation. Renzu's 10 kids individually represented 10 types of ultimate aptitudes. In Renzu's story, his 10 kids didn't have a long life. In reality, it is difficult for the Gu masters who hold 10 extreme physiques to grow and mature, almost all dying an untimely death. Of course, if they can really grow to become a rank 6, they will be able to sweep through same-stage opponents and even perform miracles such as fighting a higher rank. The Legends of Renzu, Part 6. Renzu was unable to endure the heart of loneliness, thus he dug out both eyes, turning them into a son and daughter. This alleviated his sense of loneliness. But good things do not last, for his children started to crave the scenery of the outside world, forgetting all about their father Renzu and always going out to play until they forgot the time and even forgot to take care of Renzu. Renzu could not see anything, it was total darkness. But at times he could see a little bit of light. To this he felt perturbed and asked the Attitude Gu. Attitude Gu told this to him. Oh, this is the eternal light given out by the Faith Gu. Renzu's 10 children, eldest son Verdant Great Sun, second daughter Desolate Ancient Moon. The 10 children's aptitude defied heaven. Thus heaven was wary and did not give them a long lifespan. In the Gu world, the 10 children also represented the top 10 most extreme aptitudes, that is, the 10 extreme physiques. Renzu's 10 children died one by one, and Renzu was about to die of old age. But at the end, Renzu gathered the corpse of his 10 children and sacrificed himself, all going into the stomach of the Derivation Gu. Derivation Gu's stomach burst, exploding and countless life spreading across the land, creating the first batch of mortals. These mortals did not have Renzu or the 10 children's talent, but they could cultivate after awakening their aperture. Humanity thus grew and developed, forming today's size. Of course, that is all a mythological story. The Legends of Renzu, Part 7. In this world, humans weren't the only ones who knew how to brew wines. The earliest records of wine came from the legend of Renzu. Renzu's 2 eyes turned into his eldest son, Verdant Great Sun, and daughter Desolate Ancient Moon. Verdant Great Sun was always with Desolate Ancient Moon, and this close association created feelings towards his own sister. However, Desolate Ancient Moon refused his wooing. Verdant Great Sun was annoyed because of this and knew he needed some help. Thus he asked the Wisdom Gu. At first, the Wisdom Gu ignored him and avoided him as much as it could. But Verdant Great Sun kept on persevering, and the Wisdom Gu couldn't endure this annoyance anymore, so it told him away. In the east dwells a group of honey peach monkeys. Drink the wine brewed by them and come find me. Thus, Verdant Great Sun went to the east and drank the wine. The wine brewed by the honey peach monkeys was fruit wine. And ever since Verdant Great Sun drank the wine and returned, his face had a rosy flush. He smacked his lips as he recalled the taste. So, wine is sweet. The Wisdom Gu smiled and said, In the west lies a group of psychic monkeys. Go taste the wine brewed by them. The wine brewed by psychic monkeys was bitter wine. Verdant Great Sun went to the west and drank the wine. Since then, his tongue had a yellowish-brown hue to it. He recalled the taste with a bitter expression. So, wine can also be bitter. Wisdom Gu said to him again, Wine is both bitter and sweet. Love is the same, and human lives are even more so. At the north dwells a group of Vajra monkeys. They also brew wine, go taste it. The Vajra monkeys brewed strong wine. Verdant Great Sun enjoyed this wine very much and drank till he was dead drunk. He felt this wine was really to his taste and wanted to drink even more after getting drunk. He drank from the bowl at first before trying to drink it directly from the wine jar. Finally, he started throwing up. The wine started showing its effects, making him feel an unbearable pain. He felt the insides of his body was on fire, as if lava was flowing through them. It's too hot, he screamed. All the fire flowed in reverse towards his head, and his hair started burning. From then on, his hair burned endlessly like fire. When Verdant Great Sun woke up, he saw the Wisdom Goo looking at him. "What did you think of the strong wine?" the Wisdom Goo asked. Verdant Great Sun heaved a sigh. "I understand now, no matter how good the wine is, you will vomit it out if you drink too much. Everything should be taken with moderation." The Wisdom Goo laughed out loudly. "In the north dwells a group of sky water monkeys. Their wine is also quite good. Go taste it." Sky water monkey's wine was clear wine and was completely opposite of the strong wine. Verdant Great Sun lightly tasted the wine, and the moment he did so, he completely forgot all his worries and felt like he was floating in the air, with a hazy and intoxicated look in his eyes. The Wisdom Goo again asked him about his experience. He lightly waved his hands. "Having known the joys of wine, I will not pass it on to those who are sober." The Wisdom Goo chuckled and left quietly. Thus, humans weren't the first species to brew wine. Rather, it was the monkeys who were ahead of the humans. Ordinary monkey groups all knew how to brew wine. The wines were different from one monkey group to another, with all kinds of taste. However, humans collectively called the wine brewed by the monkeys as monkey wine.